Scrapper. If you've ever wondered who designed the most dangerous robots in Decepticon history, wonder no more. Scrapper is the chief engineer and de facto leader of the Constructicons, and he is terrifyingly good at his job. In Generation 1, he alt-modes as a front-end loader, and while that sounds boring on paper, this is the guy responsible for constructing Soundwave, Megatron's base of operations, and half the weapons the Decepticons ever fielded. Scrapper doesn't fight because he's told to. He fights because he calculated that eliminating you is more efficient than going around you. His engineering genius is so respected that even Megatron defers to his judgment on construction projects, which is wild when you consider Megatron defers to basically nobody. He actually enjoys being what he is. No resentment, no identity crisis, just a brilliant, violent engineer who found the perfect job description. He forms the right leg of Devastator, which is fitting because Scrapper is quite literally the foundation everything else stands on. Hook. If Scrapper is the guy who builds the thing, Hook is the guy who makes sure it's perfect or tears it apart and starts over. Hook transforms into a crane and serves as the Constructicon surgeon and mechanical engineer, which sounds like a great combination until you realize his perfectionism borders on pathological. He has interrupted surgeries mid-operation because the aesthetic of the incision wasn't clean enough. Other Decepticons actively avoid asking Hook for help because getting help from him means enduring an hour-long lecture about how everything you built was amateur garbage. He's arrogant, elitist, and looks down on almost every other Transformer alive, which somehow makes him incredibly effective because he will never, ever accept substandard work. In combat, he doesn't spray and pray. He identifies the single point of failure in your structure and goes straight for it. Hook forms the upper torso and head of Devastator, meaning every time the giant green monster makes a decision, it's technically using Hook's head, which explains a lot, honestly. Bone Crusher. Here's where the personality starts swinging in the other direction. Bone Crusher doesn't build. Bone Crusher destroys. Full stop. His alt mode is a bulldozer, and he approaches everything in life the way a bulldozer approaches a wall. Bone Crusher is defined entirely by his love of demolition. He doesn't destroy things because the mission requires it. He destroys things because destruction is its own reward. Buildings, terrain, enemy positions, the morale of anyone nearby, all equally valid targets. Scrapper has to carefully manage when and how Bone Crusher is deployed because left unsupervised, he will absolutely demolish something they needed. What makes Bone Crusher genuinely terrifying isn't the raw destruction though, it's the enthusiasm. He is a force of nature that happens to take orders occasionally when it aligns with what he wanted to do anyway. He forms the left arm of Devastator, which means the fist that Devastator swings at everything comes equipped with Bone Crusher's burning desire to watch things collapse. Long Haul. Now here's a character study. Long Haul is a dump truck. He hauls materials back and forth between construction sites and supply depots. And he hates it. Not in an angry, aggressive way like Bone Crusher. In a deep, quiet, existential way. Long Haul is a Decepticon warrior who genuinely believes he deserves better than being a glorified cargo hauler, and he is completely right. He's tough, durable, and capable enough to hold his own in serious combat. But because his alt mode is optimized for carrying heavy loads, Scrapper consistently assigns him logistics duty while everyone else goes on raids. What makes Long Haul compelling is that he doesn't quit or defect. He complains constantly, sulks magnificently, and then does the job anyway. He forms the right leg of Devastator alongside Scrapper, which means Long Haul quite literally carries the weight of the most powerful Decepticon combiner ever built. And nobody ever thanks him for it. If that isn't the most relatable Transformer in existence, I don't know what is. Mixmaster. Chemistry class is in session, and the teacher is completely unhinged. Mixmaster is the Constructicon's chemist, and he alt-modes as a cement mixer, which is a front. The barrel rotates not to mix concrete, but to combine chemical compounds into substances that should not exist in nature. He has synthesized acids that dissolve Cybertronian alloys on contact. He experiments constantly, and his definition of a successful experiment is one where something dramatic happened, regardless of whether it was the intended result. His personality sits in this unsettling place between manic scientist and straight-up villain. He doesn't care about the application of his creations beyond the intellectual satisfaction of making something new and horrible. Other Decepticons give his workspace a wide berth because you genuinely never know what's going to come rolling out of that barrel. He forms the left leg of Devastator, and in some continuities his chemical expertise means that even in combined form, Devastator produces toxic substances as a byproduct of just existing. That detail is as disgusting as it sounds. Scavenger. Every team has the one member who just desperately needs to be included, and for the Constructicons, that member is Scavenger. He alt-modes as a power shovel or excavator depending on the continuity, and his defining character trait is an almost painful need for approval and validation. Scavenger is deeply insecure about his place on the team, which drives him to constantly overperform, volunteer for dangerous missions, and loudly advertise every small success he achieves. The tragic irony is that he's actually quite skilled. He can locate rare minerals and valuable materials buried deep underground background that nobody else would ever find. But because he's constantly anxious about being seen as useful, he undermines himself by being obnoxious about it. In combat, his insecurity manifests as recklessness. He takes risks he doesn't need to take because he's always trying to prove something. He forms the right arm of Devastator. The arm responsible for grabbing and pulling things apart belongs to the one guy on the team who just wanted to be appreciated. Demolisher. Now we step sideways into the Unicron trilogy, and things get considerably more tragic. Demolisher in Transformers Armada is a Decepticon heavy soldier who alt-modes as a wheeled military vehicle and serves as one of Megatron's most loyal officers. What sets Demolisher apart from most Decepticons is that his loyalty isn't strategic. He doesn't follow Megatron because it's the smart move or because he's afraid. He follows Megatron because he genuinely, deeply believes in him. That level of sincere devotion makes him simultaneously one of the most sympathetic and most dangerous characters in Armada. Because a soldier who will do anything without questioning it is a weapon, not a person. His arc across the Unicron trilogy has him questioning where his loyalty should lie and what it even means to serve something faithfully when that thing keeps changing. For a cartoon about alien robots collecting space cube batteries, that's surprisingly heavy material. Wedge, Robots in Disguise 2001 introduces the build team, and if the Generation 1 Constructicons proved that construction vehicle transformers were inherently Decepticon territory, Wedge and his crew exist specifically to prove that wrong. Wedge is a bulldozer, he leads the build team, and he is unambiguously an Autobot. Not a reformed Decepticon, not a neutral party who picked a side. A full-throated Autobot who happens to alt-mode as heavy construction equipment. He's young, enthusiastic, occasionally reckless, and carries the kind of confidence that either gets you killed or makes you genuinely dangerous in a fight. His leadership style is less strategic calculation and more organized momentum. He picks a direction, commits completely, and trusts his team to back him up. It works more often than it should. Heavy Load, the dump truck of the build team, and unlike Long Haul who spent his entire existence resenting the hauling role, Heavy Load has made a kind of peace with it. He's big, he's durable, and he carries things. That's the job. He's not going to pretend it's glamorous. Heavy Load is straightforward in a way that most Transformers characters aren't. No hidden resentments, no secret ambitions, no complicated feelings about his place in the hierarchy. He shows up, he does what needs doing, and he goes home. In a franchise full of characters defined by internal conflict and identity crises, Heavy Load is almost radical in his contentment. He knows what he is, and he's completely fine with it. Rollbar, the build team cement mixer, which means yes, there are now 3 cement mixer transformers on this list between Mixmaster, Quickmix, and Rollbar, and each one of them is a completely different personality. Where Mixmaster is chaotic and Quickmix is hyperactive, Rollbar sits somewhere quieter. He's methodical, reliable, and functions as the build team's practical thinker. Not the strategist, not the muscle, but the one who looks at a situation and identifies what actually needs to happen versus what everyone is talking about doing. He speaks less than the others and tends to be right more often as a direct result. Every team that functions properly has someone in that role. Rollbar fills it without ever needing credit for it. Buckethead, a crane and excavator hybrid who rounds out the build team, and where the other 3 members have relatively stable personalities, Buckethead is the most openly combative of the group. He is extremely hostile toward Decepticons in a way that goes beyond mission parameters. Buckethead takes the conflict personally. Other Autobots fight because they have to or because it's the right thing to do. Buckethead fights because he genuinely cannot stand what the Decepticons represent and wants them to know it every single time they meet. That anger makes him a ferocious fighter and an occasionally difficult teammate. He forms a component of Landfill, the build team's combined form, and his aggression feeds directly into the Gestalt's overall combat temperament. The build team combines into something controlled and purposeful. Buckethead is a big reason that control occasionally slips. Hightower. In the live-action movie universe, the Constructicons get dramatically reimagined as massive earth-moving machines that combine to form a Devastator so enormous he dwarfs buildings. Hightower is a yellow hydraulic crane and one of the components that makes up the movie's version of Devastator. There isn't much individual characterization for Hightower in the films, because the movie Constructicons are less defined characters and more defined forces of destruction. But what the films do brilliantly is the scale. When Hightower and the other components merge on the sand dunes at Giza, the combined result is something that makes the audience genuinely uncomfortable in a way that giant robot fights usually don't. Rampage. The movie universe Rampage is a twin-bladed excavator, which is already a more aggressive design than most real-world construction equipment, and his personality matches. In Revenge of the Fallen, Rampage is sent to hunt down Sam Witwicky, and what follows is one of the most genuinely threatening pursuit sequences in the film franchise. Rampage doesn't just chase, he hunts. There's a predatory quality to his movement that the other Constructicons don't quite have, probably because a twin excavator designed to rip through terrain reads much more like a predator than a dump truck or cement mixer. Of all the movie Constructicons, Rampage is the one that most feels like he would keep coming nothing even if you blew off 3 of his limbs. Scrap metal. Here is where the movie universe does something genuinely brutal. Scrap metal is a smaller Constructicon, a yellow mining vehicle, and in Revenge of the Fallen he appears alongside the other Constructicons when they begin their merger sequence on the beach. Except the merger doesn't include him. What happens instead is that the other Constructicons tear scrap metal apart and consume him for extra mass to build a bigger Devastator. He's killed and eaten by his own teammates before the combination is even complete. It's horrifying in a way that lands differently than most Transformers deaths, because it's not even a battle. It's efficiency. The Constructicons looked at scrap metal and decided he was more useful as components than as a person. Overload. Overload in the movie universe is a massive dump truck and one of the largest individual components of movie Devastator, described in some materials as a remote-controlled vehicle so enormous that the other Constructicons can hitch rides on him. In the broader toy line and tie-in materials, Overload gets slightly more characterization as a bruiser whose entire tactical philosophy is weight and momentum. Get big enough and moving fast enough and most problems solve themselves. It's not sophisticated. It absolutely works. He's also appeared in the aligned continuity as a distinct character, where he gets a bit more personality as a straightforward heavy-hitting soldier who appreciates a problem he can solve by hitting it harder. Quick Mix. Cybertron Continuity Quick Mix is the other cement mixer on this list, and unlike Mixmaster he is an Autobot. Yes, Autobot. Not every character with a cement mixer alt mode is a Decepticon. Quick Mix brings an almost absurd level of enthusiasm to the Autobot cause. He's quick-thinking, energetic, and constantly in motion, which fits the alt mode surprisingly well. A cement mixer is never sitting still, and neither is Quick Mix. His role is largely support and construction on the Autobot side, which creates an interesting mirror to the Constructicons. One side uses engineering genius to destroy and dominate. The other uses it to build and protect. Quick Mix is the argument that the construction vehicle alt mode was never inherently evil. It just ended up on the wrong team most of the time. Gravedigger. The name alone is doing a lot of work here, and Gravedigger lives up to it. Appearing across multiple toy lines and expanded universe materials, Gravedigger is a darker, more sinister take on the construction vehicle transformer concept. His alt mode is an excavator, and depending on the continuity he functions somewhere between a soldier and an executioner, explicitly associated with dealing with fallen transformers on both sides. The Gravedigger motif runs through his characterization consistently. He's associated with ending things, with the aftermath of battle rather than the heat of it. Most Decepticons want to win. Gravedigger seems most comfortable when everyone is done. That's a different kind of frightening. Skipjack, movie universe Constructicon, skid steer loader, shows up in Revenge of the Fallen tie-in materials as one of the bodies that gets thrown into the Devastator combination at Giza. There is not a lot of characterization here. He is a construction vehicle that contributes mass to something much larger and much angrier. In a team full of characters with rich internal lives and deep resentments, Skipjack is the guy who shows up, does his part, and disappears into the gestalt. Every team needs one. Dirt Boss, Transformers Animated gives us this guy, a forklift-based Constructicon who runs organized crime among the Decepticons operating on Earth. And yes, that is exactly as insane as it sounds. He is small, ruthless, and operates entirely on mob logic in a show that usually plays things much broader. Dirt Boss doesn't want to conquer the universe. He wants his cut. He wants territory, respect, and for everyone around him to understand that the forklift is in charge. Most villains want to destroy the world. Dirt Boss just wants to run it. Payload appears in tie-in materials for the first live-action film as a cement truck variant operating in Mission City during the chaos of that opening act. The expanded materials give him slightly more to work with, but Payload's legacy is mostly that he was there when it mattered and vanished when it was over. Devastator. Here it is. The reason the Constructicons exist. The reason combining robots exist at all in Transformers. When Scrapper, Hook, Bone Crusher, Long Haul, Mixmaster, and Scavenger merge in Generation 1, what comes out the other side isn't a team working together. It's a single entity, enormous and almost mindless, that functions on pure destructive instinct. The genius of Devastator as a concept is that all the intelligence and personality of the individual Constructicons gets overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the combination. Hook's precision, Scrapper's strategic brilliance, Mixmaster's chemical genius, all of it essentially drowns in raw power. Devastator doesn't plan. Devastator does not negotiate. Devastator moves toward things, and those things stop existing. In the movie universe, the scale gets pushed even further. Revenge of the Fallen's Devastator stands multiple stories tall, uses a vortex grinder in his chest to consume everything in front of him, and physically tears apart a pyramid with his bare hands. It takes a railgun mounted on a naval destroyer firing around the size of a car to bring him down. The Constructicons individually are dangerous, complicated characters with internal lives and real motivations. Together they become something that doesn't think about any of that anymore. If you want to watch similar content in the future, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for the next video.